Doing it for you?
I like it. Gets me going.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It is Thursday, so as every week, it is time for Talking Kids with Dr. Caitlynn. Dr. Caitlynn Iddings is with us this morning. She is a Lexington pediatrician.
And today, we're talking about Cannabis Hyperemesis syndrome. What did I just say?
Cannabis Hyperemesis.
Hyperemesis.
Yes.
There we go.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay, what is
so this is a syndrome that occurs with very heavy marijuana use. And by heavy, I mean, basically you have to be using daily or multiple times a week for months to years for this to occur, which is becoming more of a problem, especially since there are a lot of states that have legalized marijuana, and it's just more readily available, especially to our teenagers, in the form of vaping pens like we've talked about before, but also in the form of edibles and other ways to get it, gummies, that sort of thing. And the thing about marijuana now compared to like the marijuana from 20, 40 years ago is it used to only contain about 2 to 3% of the active THC component. And now some of those edibles, I mean, it's like 90%.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So, and the edibles take a little longer to kick in, so then they eat more and more. And then THC and that active component that is typically going to the brain to give you that sort of high is actually fat soluble, so it kind of gets stored in your fat. So over time you can have these massive amounts kind of just stored in your system if you're using chronically and daily. And then at random points, if you get stressed out or you fast or you decide to run a marathon or train for a marathon, then that actually gets released from your fat into your system and can cause some pretty significant issues. Yeah, so but like I said, the mainstay of diagnosing it, because there are other things that it can be confused for. There's something called cyclic vomiting syndrome, which does tend to happen more in teenagers and kids, and that is sometimes associated with marijuana use, because we also know marijuana is a anti-nausea medicine. Like, it's one of the things it is approved for is for chemo, nausea, that sort of thing. But it's kind of this weird paradoxical issue where it's acting on the nausea center in your brain, but it also activates these receptors in your stomach and your gut that causes your stomach to not empty as quickly, and then you can sort of get this prodromal phase where you're just really nauseous all the time. You don't really want to eat. That's kind of the first phase. And then after that, it can get into this phase, the hyperemesis phase, where you're vomiting for days. And so it's really important to tease out and make sure we're asking teenagers that question, like, are you using marijuana? Try not to stigmatize it, because we want them to tell us. It's very important to know, right? And if they do have that, like, how often are you using? And then the other thing that helps differentiate it between CVS is, for whatever reason, very hot showers or baths tend to help with the nausea. And so you'll get this history of like, oh yeah, like, what helps? That's always a question we ask. Well, what helps with your nausea? What makes it worse? What makes it better? Well, if I take a really hot shower first thing in the morning, or when it's happening, or I get in a really hot scalding bath, it seems to help the nausea. And so that is kind of one of the ways we help diagnose it and differentiate that and the heavy THC use. And then the treatment, I mean, is really supportive. So I mean, some kids, when I was working at the hospital as a resident, we had a couple of cases of this, and these kids can get really sick. I mean, like severe dehydration, vomiting for days, lots of electrolyte derangements. I mean, a lot of them are taking like high doses of other antiemetics, so then they can get kind of issues with their heart from those. And so it's important to recognize, important to support them through it. And then the most important part is, of course, in order for it to get better, they have to stop. Like, they can't, like, they actually have to stop. And it can take up to 48 hours after stopping heavy use, all the way up to a couple weeks for it to really improve. But
detox,
you have to get them to buy into that, because a lot of them are kind of in denial. I mean, if you're using marijuana twice a day, multiple times a day, or multiple times a week, usually there's something that you're like trying to self-medicate, and so a lot of times that can be anxiety, depression, other stuff like that. So getting to the root cause and saying, look, we need to help you stop this because this is what's causing the problem. They can kind of be in denial about, like, no, marijuana helps with nausea, so it's important to kind of get that through to them.
Dr. Caitlynn, thank you.